Thanks for joining us today, guys. Today we are joined by Stephanie Walter and excited for her to share a little bit about her story and her background. Without further ado, Stephanie, you mind introducing yourself to the audience?
Sure. My name is Stephanie Walter, and I'm the CEO of Erbe Wealth. I was an insurance agent, started my career as an insurance agent in 2005 and built that up over about 16 years. Last year, I ended up selling my business and going over into what I do now, which is I put together syndications. Specifically, I raise money for these apartment syndications that we buy. We're on our 12th deal. We just closed on one last week for $107 million. So just love talking to people about my journey.
That's awesome. How did you go from insurance to real estate syndication? Were these clients that you were working with on the real estate side? Like, how'd you jump from one to the next?
Yeah, I always loved real estate. So I was doing the single family home real estate pretty almost right out the gate of once I became an insurance agent. Any extra money, that's where I was investing it. But I was invited to a boot camp in 2016 that was talking about what how to buy an apartment building. And I had some interest in that. And that's when I first heard the concept of what a syndication was. Before then, I'd never even heard the terminology at all. When I heard it described and what it was, which is really just a group of people buying something that no one could do on their own, I just was sold on it. I loved the concept. So I just kind of did a deep dive around 2016 to 2018 to learn and get an education about it. Did my first syndication in 2018. And then just kind of haven't looked back since. So, and yeah, long story short, I worked with a lot of wealthy people, and I noticed the way that they were investing their money. So I kind of shifted up a lot of the way that I had been investing my money, and that led to a large cash flow change, which is why I could sell my agency last year and, technically retire.
Very nice. For our audience, right, as we talk about this idea of increased profitability, increased cash flow, which you have referenced, it sounds like as your agency became more successful, there was parts that you were putting back into your agency, and then it sounds like investing in real estate as well. Is that kind of what your strategy out of the gate was?
Yeah. I think initially that was definitely my strategy. As things started going longer and longer in my relationship, I was a captive agent, which just means I was with one company. I could only write insurance with one company. I did notice that, of course, they were pushing us to put a lot of our money into the businesses by taking out loans and stuff like that. I attribute this to my dad, is just really kind of weighed out, the benefits of doing that as opposed to putting my money somewhere else. So as I got later in my career, I would put more money into real estate because I felt the return was better there than it was in my business.
So you kind of had an ROI either in your head or written down somewhere where it was like, okay, we're at a point where we've got the stability, we're getting the cash flow from the business, time to diversify a little bit.
Yep. Just like my dad said, don't put all your eggs in one basket. So.
And how did you you started on the single family side, kind of what sparked that interest and kind of where did you start in terms of those investments?
That I've always just kind of had a love of real estate, not a great deal of knowledge, unfortunately, but I had also seen my dad buy rental properties in the past. And so I just initially, when I hate to say, I was going out and just kind of finding a good location, an area where I thought that if there'd be growth from Denver, that, these certain areas would really boom. And, I was lucky enough to be right. I did most of my investing, in 2000, really in the last crash. So 2007, 8, 9 was when I bought most of my single family properties. And so they all did, extremely well, appreciation wise.
Were you always shooting for appreciation, or was it,
Yep.
cash flow? So it was
That
appreciation.
was, and that was kind of a lack of education on my part. Is I was like, my goal was really, I was going to buy these properties and then hold on to them until the 30 years until I was ready to retire. And then, but the cash flow was pretty pathetic until I got, more educated about commercial real estate, and that equity just sitting, realized that wasn't the best way to do it. But that was just, my lack of education there.
So it sounds like as we fast forward, you got involved in large deal syndications. It sounds like mostly multifamily type of plays. Kind of what you went to a boot camp, it sounds like. Was there a mentor that kind of encouraged you to go that way, or something you read? Like, how'd you make that shift?
Yeah, I joined the mentorship, or it was more of an educational group called RE Mentor is the name of it. And I did have a mentor or coach, I guess, for the first year to get you through all of the education and everything. And I was really inspired by her. Actually, she did all of the money raising for the CEO of this company, who had at the time, I think, had like 8,000 units or something. And she'd raised over the course of 20 years, like $200 million. If you looked at her, you'd never guess that, but she's a very humble person, but realized very quickly that she was kind of the power behind this partnership. And she inspired me to be like, focusing on the money raising, because that's really where I think you have a lot of power and control in that position.
So you mentioned you fortunate to know a lot of high net worth people. Did that come from just out of your insurance business, or how did you cultivate that base, right, which enabled you to make this transition into representing money in these transactions?
That was the hardest, and still is, to be honest with you, the hardest part of this business is for me, because no, my insurance base, we work with accredited investors. So for your audience, that's people that have a net worth over $1 million. And actually my agency, that really wasn't, it was more middle America type of agency. Also, I think a lot of people, they saw me as an insurance agent. So when I, brought up that this is, what I'm doing, it wasn't, I don't know, it's so different anyways from what most people have heard about investing. I didn't get much from my insurance agency. So it was really just going out and finding people through my insurance agency who had been super giving. I had a mortgage person who sent me a ton of business and just kind of sat down and said what I was going to be doing. And he set up a meeting with me with about 5 men, and went in and kind of told them about our first deal we had, and was really, really nervous. But from there, got my first largest investor, and from there then he referred me to like 5 people, and then it was just this constant outreach to and then as we have now, we have 12 deals under our belt. We have a lot more track record to speak of, but it really comes from us through our referrals and and my partner and I were really committed to making the experience for the investor super good, that they would want to repeat it over and over again. So but I am constantly trying to acquire new people and get the word out about this type of investing, because it's so impactful to people.
As we go back a little bit, so you mentioned insurance was running till about last year. It sounds like there was an overlap between what you were doing with Erbe and the insurance, right?
Mhm.
How did you determine like where to put your time, right, relative to the insurance versus this new thing that's starting up? And obviously you started to see success very quickly, and I imagine that started to pivot some of your focus. But kind of what was that like? Because it's almost like you had your own business, was doing well, and now you're starting another business and trying to figure out where to go from there.
Yeah, I mean, for me, I always loved the insurance, and I love my clients and everything about that. But what happened over time in that profession is I felt like I had a lot of clients that liked me, loved working with me. Yet the insurance company would do things that, that were out of my control. They weren't coming and asking my opinion about, how to handle certain, the rate increases, or say a certain aspect of an insurance claim. And that I found frustrating. What I embraced about this was, I think, I realized that my clients' experience in these investments all come back to me, which I really liked a lot. So once I saw that that's kind of the dynamics between the two, I did have really solid employees at my agency. So, I'd be there every day regardless. So I was always there for, any call or emergency that would come up, but my focus was on the real estate.
Um, what's the most exciting thing you're working on today?
I love the project, and this one, we're doing a development of green homes down in Davie, Florida, and they're really really cool homes that can be completely off the grid. So that's completely different than what we usually do. The apartments, I think every apartment complex we find has its own story and is exciting in its own way. But I mean, what's exciting right now is just, we're investing largely in Florida. The migration that's happening in Florida and the lack of housing is causing these insane rent growths, which it's definitely cyclical. It's not always going to stay this way, but it is an exciting time in this profession for sure.
And in terms of your project identification, is that something you guys are doing? Are you partnering with, developers, builders, et cetera? And kind of what does that relationship look like for you in identifying these projects?
Yeah, that is like the good thing about my partner and myself, is that he's that guy and I'm the money person. So he's been a commercial real estate agent in Florida for 40 years. So he has a ton of relationships. So we've and every property we get is an off-market deal. So it's just everyone has its own story, which is pretty interesting. So like last November, we closed on one where the developer didn't want to do anything. He didn't want to put any people in it. He just wanted to build it and move on. And so we got a heck of a discount on that one. And then in December, we closed on one that was it was a group from Canada, of owners in Canada that were just, they weren't suited to do this, and they wanted out. And so that, turned into a great buying opportunity for us. So it's definitely my partner that brings those connections in.
And then it sounds like you are owning, operating
Yep.
these properties.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Nice. For someone who is looking to make a transition, right, whether it's from single family into multifamily or commercial or just straight in, what's the starting point, right? Like, how did you start? It can be a scary place. Lenders don't look favorably on those who don't have experience, right? Who are trying to do it on their own, right? And so like, how do you get it? The boot camp was key, I'm guessing, for you, but how do these people get educated, and where's a good starting point for them?
I think, well, there's a lot of groups out there, probably even within your own hometown that have, syndication resources, either like a monthly meeting. There's the national ones. Like I said, participated in an RE mentor, but there's plenty of places to do that. Yeah, as an investor, it can be kind of scary to, first of all, most people have not heard of this type of investing. But the second part is it's very different. And so I like to work with the new people because they're very cautious and, usually the people I work with a lot of different people, but I like working with the ones that are tired landlords, because that's kind of what I was after a time. And then they bring their money over and realize that, after the first year, usually it takes of them receiving cash every month and then getting their K-1 around tax time, realizing that, oh my gosh, this is a great write-off for me too, as well as I'm getting cash every month and I don't have to worry about the tenant calling me. That's my favorite, person to work with as a person that's looking to invest in these deals. I think I hear this is the best thing to do is really to vet. And this is what my wealthy, very, very wealthy investors do, is they're very interested in vetting the team that's running the deal and saying, do they have a track record of success? It's really not as difficult as everybody thinks that it is. I don't know that I'm trying to think of if there's a resource for just investors. I know that going to my website, I have a lot of articles about, just kind of the nitty gritty of learning what a syndication is and how it works and things like that. Finding a particular group of people to work for is just really, I think the best measure is what they've done in the past and talking to other investors that are currently investing with them.
So you mentioned some of your investors, when they get the K-1, they realize that it's a nice tax write-off and they're getting cash, right? So that takes me to 2 questions. One, have you always been kind of that financially minded, numbers based, where you like digging into those sort of things and explaining it to others? And then the second is, I'm assuming you're doing a cost segregation, pulling forward expenses, creating depreciation write-offs to create that tax benefit, in addition to probably 1031 exchanges and other tax shielding things that are going on.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I think I've definitely been business minded. But I didn't come to it till quite late in my life. Like I was 30 when I started my insurance agency. And then I think when I took that class of boot camp, I was 46. So it's really never too late to, change your thinking about things. I definitely, once I got into having my own business, because before then I was a W-2 type of employee, that's when I really felt like I just loved the numbers. I still do. My sister, will laugh at me because, I would run numbers from the beginning of my agency until, the day I sold it. I could tell you how much we sold, every number was put into my system every month so that I could tell you 10 years ago, what were we doing here? I definitely, am a numbers person, but yeah, the tax benefit is, I tell people, the investors about that. They're very concerned with the returns, obviously, and ours, we're on our 12th deal and we have not, we've returned over 20% annualized return on every single investment we've done up to this point. So that's usually the thing that really attracts them, but the tax benefits that I guess they don't see it until they believe it. until they see it, they don't believe it. And so when the tax, like what you're saying, the cost segregation, which is just speeding up depreciation, comes to them, and they have like a 40 or 50%, say they invested $100,000, they get a $40,000 or $50,000 tax write-off from that first year of participating in that investment, then it sure becomes a lot more attractive.
So they're getting a tax write-off, but to help the listeners, they're also getting monthly checks or quarterly checks whenever the distributions come, correct? So it's not like they're losing money, they're actually gaining money, but having paper tax benefits.
That's it. Yeah. Just like what a lot of the wealthy do is they don't really have a W-2 income. They have the income that they receive from their investments, which is tax less. And then they're able to have these paper losses, which is, what this would signify. So someone that would invest $100,000 with us would get a payment every month. Depending on their participation in the deal, they get a check every month. So they made money, but on their taxes shows that they had a loss.
Makes sense. If you were going to give someone a piece of advice and say, hey, start here, this is the one thing that's most important, right? For someone who's got their own business, entrepreneurial in nature, trying to get over that hump, and diversify, what would that be for them in your mind?
I mean, I love syndications. Obviously, that's why I'm pretty invested in that myself. In fact, ended up selling all of my single family homes and investing my money into the syndications we were doing. And I did that because I changed my focus. Before, I was investing for my net worth, so I could just sit there and tell everybody, oh yeah, I'm worth this amount of money. But, I had no, freedom as like cash flow coming in every month. And so once I shifted my focus and moved my money into these syndications, which have the monthly cash flow, that's what gave me the freedom to retire at some point. But it was really the mindset change of investing for cash flow rather than investing for having it accumulate for my net worth, and in 30 years being able to retire. And that definitely changed things for me.
For people who want to learn more and connect with you, right? Either talk about the boot camp or learn about syndications or invest with you guys. What's the best way for them to get in contact with you?
My website is the best place. That's www.erbewealth.com. And that'll show you, our past track records. I have a lot of articles that I post up there pretty regularly, kind of more focused on educating people to this type of investing. That's the best way. And then actually I have I have my group of investors or potential investors that like to be on my email list, and I send them a newsletter that's a little bit unique, I think, in the sense that I send it out once a week, and I pull out the most interesting articles, that are going on that may relate back to syndication that aren't written by me, but from other sources. And so I think it gives people, some areas to go out and research on their own, that this might be a good thing to do.
Awesome. Sounds like some great resources. Appreciate you taking the time and sharing your perspective today, Stephanie.
Well, thanks so much for having me.
Yeah. Take care.